But let's talk about Tulsa. Let's talk about Tre Lamb. He's a little bit of a different type of hire than I think some of these other coaching hires that we've talked about. I would say he's a lot, more similar to the Mike Yurimovich hire, the Matt Drinkle hire. They're all different in their own ways. All right. In Tulsa, to be honest, now the American Conference, I should say, set up in a way where they can win. Okay. Like anyone can compete in that conference theoretically, but they are not spending as much money as some of their competitors. Their geography limits them, unlike their competitors, Oklahoma, right? Oklahoma State, where they're bigger name brands, where they can use that when they go recruit in the state of Texas. I mean, Tulsa had a very solid receiver in Jaquise Martin committed, up until November, and then Jaquise Martin decommits, and he's going over to Houston now, and he's going to go play close to home, and it's it's tough losses like that where geography can hurt you, in the long run. And Jaquise Martin's a good player, good wide receiver over there that the Golden Hurricanes could have had, But Tre Lamb, his story evolves around, honestly, he's pretty young. He's 35 years old. Okay, everywhere he's coached, he's absolutely put up humongous numbers, right? When he's been the offensive coordinator at Tennessee Tech, when he's head coach at Gardner Webb, East Tennessee State. I mean, he got the head coaching job at Gardner Webb when he was what, 30 years old, 31 years old? Like, that's young, That's young. We talk about like some young offensive minded coaches and how that they can have a big impact on, smaller teams that are looking to propel their program in the right direction. We've talked about Scotty Walden before, and like how excited we were about him because he has a really interesting offense and he's going into a place that, desperately needs revival, on that side of the football. I think you could also put Tulsa in that category as well, although defense has probably been a bigger problem of theirs the last couple of seasons. But CD, I mean, how are you liking this hire, Tre Lamb? It's a new face in Division One football.
But yeah, like you said, obviously there's a similar blueprint. You're seeing some of these schools start to lean in, right? We talk about a trend when we're doing these. Of the 13 coaches we've talked about right now, including Tre Lamb, 9 of them have been offensive-minded head coaches. And like you said, it seems to be a popular trend right now. Obviously, what you can do, elevating talent or finding schemes, making your program and your football play style sexy, attracting recruits. It's all the big talent right now. And yeah, obviously we'll see. You mentioned him, a new face of the FBS. Yeah, I love that he has all his head coaching experience at just 35 years old. He's 5 years of head coaching experience is super, super impressive, right? And it's very rare. However, it has been at the FCS level. So it is definitely going to be a step up, and especially in a spot where you are Tulsa now in the American Conference, although wide open as it is, right? It's still a spot where you are by far, right, in no means like one of the top spenders in certain things. Now you are seeing, a little bit more, I think, emphasis and investment put into the program. Obviously, so real quick, his contract, it's going to be a 5-year deal, 1.4 million. It's a little bit closer to Philip Montgomery, his salary, versus Kevin Wilson, which is closer to 2 million. So you have that money. Obviously, you had to buy out Wilson, right? So you got to pay for that too. But you have that difference in salary to invest back into the program, which is hopefully they're able to do. And not that this is a budget hire at all, but I think it's part of getting a guy with less experience and less name, right? That you can go out and you don't have to spend and break the bank for him. And you can put that money back into spots where he can be successful. It's been reported that, they're going to have about $3 million for this Tulsa team for NIL money, and that's on top of the revenue sharing that's coming, right? Who knows what's going to happen with that, right? But that's on top of that, as well as $2.75 million for his assistant coaching salary pool. So obviously, it's a big deal for Tulsa, and in the American, that puts you in competitive spots for sure. But yeah, obviously, it remains to be seen. We'll see what happens. Um, It'll be interesting. I want to go back to Tulsa and what they've done, prior to 2024, right? So Kevin Wilson was the guy for a couple years. It didn't work out. But flat, it did not work out. 4-8, and then 3-0 before getting the can there at the end of the season. It was tough. He took over a program that Philip Montgomery, I thought, did a good job with, but obviously left some to be desired, and obviously did not hit the ground running at all. And I think Tulsa, obviously, it's a quick trigger. We're seeing a couple times now. You've got these coaches moving on pretty darn quickly from their or these programs moving pretty quickly on from their coaches. But sometimes it's the way it goes. And this is such a critical offseason as well, with the revenue sharing, with conference realignment, with the playoff changing structures, all that things. You want to be putting your best foot forward in college football in 2025. Make no mistake about that. Looking back when Tulsa did have success, right, even in the American, right? So they were in the CUSA, right? And then they joined the American. And Montgomery had a really nice season. You go back to 2016, and that was, by the way, maybe even a more competitive conference, top to bottom, than it is
100%.
today, right? So you had Temple, right, and Matt Rule, that was 10-4. You had South Florida was 11-2 that season. You had, Tulsa was 10-3, Navy was 9-5, Houston with Tom Herman was 9-4. That beat that Heisman Trophy winning Lamar Jackson. If you remember that season, remember the end of the year, they had that non-conference game with Louisville and Houston and all that. I think that was like a Thursday or Friday night. It was a weeknight. But anyways, that was there. Memphis was still in that. You had UCF was there. You had Cincinnati. It was a Scott Frost, who we'll be talking about later, was in the American that in 2016. So, like I said, it's there to be done. There's proof of it working at Tulsa. Now, obviously, college football has changed a lot the last 9 years for sure. Maybe it puts Tulsa in a better spot. Maybe it doesn't. And we'll see how Tre Lamb handles it all. But all in all, I mean, it's exciting. It's a change. I think you're seeing some rally behind this Tulsa program, and hopefully start to build some momentum. But obviously, it doesn't mean anything if you can't win the games on the field.
Yeah, and the man who made the decision, right, Justin Moore, brand new AD, right, coming from the athletic department at Texas A&M. Justin Moore is a very bright guy. Okay, like if you really like are tied in with Texas A&M athletics, you would know that Justin Moore had a lot to do with Jim Schlossnagle getting hired at Texas A&M, which didn't work out long term for Texas A&M, and now Texas A&M fans absolutely despise Jim Schlossnagle to his core. You know, but he took him to Omaha twice and was a runner-up national champion, right, at Texas A&M, which they never won a national championship in baseball. That was the best team, not even the best team in Texas A&M history, but like the most accomplished team in Texas A&M history. So Justin Moore had a lot to do with that signing right there. And again, like I said, it didn't work out long term, but Justin Moore, he's younger, right? He's got a lot of energy, right? He's got the experience. He's worked in a huge athletic department, right? Managing budgets, managing teams. Like he's helped. He's been associated with some good hires at Texas A&M, and he's coming over here. This is his first big hire. He's like, I'm gonna get Kevin Wilson out of here, right? And we're gonna bring in a new guy, and it's gonna be Tre Lamb. And I don't blame him, right, for thinking, hey, like, what do we talk about with some of these? We'll call them lesser, teams in certain conferences, but sometimes it's good to just have a really innovative offense, right? And then let the defense come in either spurts or maybe you hire a good staff, pause. But
Sorry.
you just made that face, so it was pretty funny. But I think Justin Moore is a guy that you can trust at Tulsa generally. So I I'm gonna ride with him on this, right? Pause.
Yeah, and who is Tre Lamb? You talked about the innovative offense. Let's hear it from him. So he talks about how he came from an air raid background. He played for an air raid head coach. His dad was an air raid guy when he was a head coach in high school, I believe. Um, he was 21-year coach in Calhoun High, right? Very, very good. 3 state titles, a lot of success there. His grandfather also has won 3 titles as a head coach in high school. So obviously that pedigree there in that family is very interesting. But he does talk about too, where that's where the terminology, that's where the roots come from. But the style and the culture, they want to run the football, and I think that's so important in the American Conference. You have a lot of programs that do both, right? But you see sometimes more. I think about Tulane. I think about Navy, Army, teams that had success this past season ran the football really, really well, and all that. He talks about getting the ball to his best football players, playing with tempo. He's going to be calling plays, so when we go through the coaching staff, later on in this video, just keep that in mind when we're talking about the offense coordinator there and what his responsibilities will be. He talks about his quarterback being like a point guard, right, where just distribute the football, don't make mistakes. They want speed, 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 speed. He talks about using his geography to his advantage, maybe not having these beefy offensive linemen around him, but you do have a lot of talent there, in wide receiver running backs, tight ends, all that kind of stuff, and also playing that offense, you are able to attract, talent to you. You're bringing in the portal here. You got Micah Tees, who you're familiar with, who our AD is familiar with. Down from Texas A&M, he's a wide receiver there, very athletic dude. You got the running back and former bowl game star Ricky Hunt Jr. coming up from Athens, Ohio.
Nice. Good
And you
get.
got Missouri's wide receiver, Mekhi Miller, as well. You talk about speed and athleticism, boom, 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 right there. And then who's going to be the quarterback? And well, obviously, a lot has to be played out there, but Kirk Francis is coming back. And obviously, it was very up and down, a little bit more down than up this year for sure. But getting him a new system, see how that goes. So it's all intriguing, obviously. And, I like to think about these things, like talk about them. But that's kind of what he's talking about bringing in, just to give you a sense of what's going on in this Tulsa program.
Yeah, he doesn't. He's not bringing over a lot of wins though, right? I think that's what concerns some people. You're like, there's only 27, 25. If you take away the FBS games, right, that he plays, he's probably what, like 24 and like 16 or something like that. So like respectable, but it's like, oh my gosh, is that enough to be promoted to a Division I job? It's like, but also you got to think about putting people in bleachers. Like what's going to get people excited? An offensively innovative, mind like that. And you mentioned air raid stuff. Like I remembered, I don't know what year it was, but Mississippi State was looking for an offensive coordinator. I'm pretty sure a few years back under Mike Leach, and I'm pretty sure the name Tre Lamb was brought up as a potential candidate to be an offensive coordinator for Mississippi State. I'm not sure, how much steam there was behind that. Whether it was Mike Leach or maybe it was Zach Arnett. When he was looking uh, for that one year that he was there. I'm not sure. I don't remember, but uh, don't quote me on that. But it's. I don't think this is a name like that's coming necessarily out of nowhere. I think like college football coaching circles have known about Tre Lamb and what he can do for a while now here. So I guess it's good to see him get promoted. It's good to see him, step up to this level. And like you said, interesting stuff in the transfer portal. But we'll see what else he can do, man. I mean, like it's got to turn into wins, right? It's got to turn into wins.
For sure. And let's get into Lamb here and who he is and where he's been. So obviously he's 35 years old, so he's only been coaching for about 12 years. He played quarterback at Tennessee Tech right after he graduated, after being captain, all that good stuff. He hopped into quarterback coaching role there. Was at Mercer for a couple of years. You'll see some crossover at Mercer with his staff he put together. And then he went back to Tennessee Tech as the offensive coordinator. Did some great things there as well. And then that got him the Gardner-Webb head coaching job, his first head coaching job there. And that was a program that was really struggling. And they were able to win their first conference title in 20 years. First playoff appearance since 1992. So maybe the wins, right, aren't there, but it's also like context matters. These programs, traditions, that all kind of matters. And we talk about expectations being different for every program, right? And we'll give our expectations later on when we
Correct.
do give our grades. Like it's not just about, he's about 500, right? But if you're honestly though, if you're Tulsa, you're taking 500, you're taking going to a bowl game every season. So that's where we're at. But yeah, and then excuse me, went to East Tennessee State, and had some good stuff there. His real prowess was them, at Gardner-Webb and what he did offensively. So they led the Big South in total points and touchdowns, total offense, completion percentage, completions back in 2022. 30 points, right? In the four of their only 5 conference games, and then including 3 over 40 points. So he was big time, obviously coach of the year that year in 2022. I believe, they were 5-0 in that conference season. So obviously that makes sense there going to the playoffs and all that. So yeah, Tre Lamb, obviously, you kind of dive in a little bit more and you can kind of start convincing yourself that, yeah, he knows what he's doing. Obviously we talked about it with Kitty, um, or Kitley at FAU. Is that Kitley, right? Similar sense here. We got a really young guy, right, coming in, offensive guru, 33 years old, and boom, thrown right in at FAU to be a head coaching job. You don't rise up like that, right, at that young age if you don't really impress people and really capture people's attentions. Obviously, it doesn't guarantee you anything, but like you said, I think there's a little bit more than meets the eye here with the young head coach in Tre Lamb.
And we talked about this with Zach Kittley, and like the biggest question mark for us about Zach Kittley, and we love Zach Kittley. I gave him an insanely high grade. Is like what he's going to do for his defensive staff that he's going to hire, because you can trust him right on that offensive side of the ball. But like these young coaches, like it is so important that they hire really good staffs, right? And the problem is that they don't necessarily have the same kind of connections that older coaches have, right? They haven't met the same people, like they haven't like they're not as tenured, right? So for me, like young coaches, like continuity and fit matter a lot. Okay, I mean experience. It definitely helps a lot. In the coaching staff room, you want ears and mouths inside there that are going to be able to tell you and give you advice and like counsel through certain things through the growing pains. But he's also been a head coach for like 4 years now, so. At the same time, Zach Kelly had never been a head coach, right? So that's why his staff might even be more important. However, even though he's coached as an offensive coordinator at the Division One FBS level, and Tre Lamb hasn't. Tre Lamb's also been a head coach, managing players, managing coaching staffs for 4 years now. So uh, I don't know. It's 5 years, I guess, 5 seasons. Yeah. So we'll see, man. I mean, I know you got a good summary for us on his staff here and what he's building. Do you like his staff that he's built, or like are we just gonna have to wait and see?
Well, again, we'll wait and see. Obviously, these are a lot of guys, and you talk about how you build a staff, your connections, and people you run through. When he's mostly in the FCS, these are not going to be people that a lot of college football fans have really heard of. And to be honest, truth be told, me neither. So I really had to dig deep, and I enjoyed learning about these guys. Let's get in here with the offense. So I mentioned, the play caller, the offensive play caller will be Tre Lamb, but there still is an offensive coordinator. The title is also going to be the QB coach, right? This will be Brad Robbins, and he was with, or he was the wide receiver coach, excuse me, at Tennessee Tech, where Tre Lamb, obviously graduated, played, and coached at. They did not have any crossover there, but that's the connection there as well. He also was an OC at North Greenville University, also coaching quarterbacks there as well. And then this past season was at UConn to be their quarterback coach and passing game coordinator. So to me, honestly, I with this hire, it's interesting because you don't need this elite, innovative play caller because you have that in Tre Lamb. You want good passing game coordinator experience, right? You want quarterback coach experience, things that he'll be doing more in the weeks leading up to the game and not necessarily on game day, which sounds like the hit there. Wide receiver is going to be Ryan Switzer. Now, college football fans will remember that name because he was a star at North Carolina, was in the NFL, played for a couple teams there, the Cowboys, Steelers, and some others, I think the Raiders as well. He's been at Tulsa for a couple years now, so 2023. And then this past season, when Kevin Wilson got hired, he was thrown in charge as a really young kid to be the interim head coach. It shows how much that program and that infrastructure how much they really like him and how invested they are in him. And obviously what he's done as such a young coaching career, super impressive. But again, young youth inexperience as well. Notice the trend here. The running back coach is going to be Cam Martin. Some of you diehard fans of college football remember him at Auburn. He was at UCF reuniting with his head football coach, Gus Malzahn. He also coached at Texas State, right? Gus Malzahn and UCF. You remember RJ Harvey. You got some really good running backs coming through there. With Cam Martin, the tight end coach, who's also going to be co-offensive coordinator. Again, it's more just formalities and pay structure and different things. It's going to be Ty Darlington. He was an all Big 12 offensive lineman at Oklahoma. He also coached at his alma mater in Florida as well, has got, obviously that pedigree on the offensive line, but also has a lot of experience coaching tight ends with Oklahoma and Florida. The O-line coach is going to be New Mexico, excuse me, I didn't even write down his name. I'm going to get that in 1 second here. He was New Mexico's tight end coach this past season. He was also the O-line coach with Gardner Webb with Lamb. So we talk about this in a lot of our videos, right? I love the communication and the connection and the chemistry between your offensive play caller and your offensive line coach. I think those are such key spots. There's so much you have to control as an offensive line coach. It's 5 positions at once, and how hard it is to have a good, successful offensive line with the athletes that are on the field, with defenses, and obviously with the fast pace of college football and all that kind of stuff. That's so important. So you get that chemistry. I love. He also, played at South Alabama. He played at NC State for a little bit after transfer there for his graduate season. Was also in the NFL with Houston. So obviously, all in all, it's a very interesting hire. Um, it's yeah, it's a I don't listen. It's youth, it's inexperience, and all that's kind of good stuff. But the reality is, I mean, it's kind of what you're getting with Tre Lamb. I mean, you're just gonna try something new here, and that's Joe
Yeah,
Sheffel. Sheffel, by the way, that's the offensive line coach. Excuse me.
yeah, and the youth doesn't necessarily make me as concerned, right? It's nice seeing a lot of continuity there, but sometimes when you're a young coach, those are your only options, right? Like, especially like going to Tulsa. How many like top tier, like offensive coaching staff members are you going to be able to actually get to come with you? If you're not already tenured at the FBS level, like you're going to have to like just have a
Taking
lot of
chances.
guys. Yeah, you're gonna have to take chances on guys, and you're also gonna have to bring guys over that you've had, keep guys, retain people, good coaches like Ryan Switzer, right on staff, like you mentioned. So it'll be really interesting, and I'm sure Ryan Switzer was a big part in acquiring Micah Tees, Kai Miller. So we'll see. Obviously, Jaquise Martin decommits, goes to Houston. We'll see how he does there with Willie Fritz and the boys. But I, I mean, we talk about these stabs, and there's stabs that we can get excited about, and there's stabs that we aren't necessarily as excited about. This is one of those ones where you just gotta wait and see, right? It's not going to be a big bump. It's not going to be a big negative to the grade that I give on this coaching hire. But the reason why we want to do these coaching hires or these videos after, a while after they've happened is to see how these staffs have assembled, to see how these guys are going to operate their program. And then I think it's fair to like, give an attempt and try to grade what we think the hires are, basically. So,
Without a doubt. And Kevin Wilson, by the way, like he was 63 years old and that didn't work out. So you got a little opposite there. And I think that's part of, what
almost
sold,
half his age.
yeah, that sold Justin Moore, the AD there. And obviously, you go big, go home, right? So defense side of the ball, obviously you talked about it. We talked about with Zach Hitley, where how important this is going to be. If you have a very offensive minded head coach, guy that's going to be consumed with calling plays, it's a huge responsibility in the FBS, right? The defense side of the football, that defense staff has to be super self-sufficient and on the same page there. What I like is you'll see a trend here, a lot of connections to each other and a lot of connection to Coach Lamb. So there's that built-in chemistry already and that trust that has been formed. Starting with the defensive coordinator who will be calling plays, Josh Reardon. He'll also be coaching the safeties as well. He was at Gardner Webb with Lamb as the defensive coordinator and safeties coach as well. Before that, he was the DB coach at Eastern Kentucky. The D line coach is Hakeem Gray. He was with Lamb and with Reardon at Gardner Webb as the D line coach. He played college football at Louisiana Tech. The linebackers coach is going to be Mike Gray. Mike Gray is also going to be the co-defense coordinator, but again, it's more about formalities. He was the linebacker coach at Gardner Webb, as well as a co-special teams coordinator. And he also played for and coached under Tre Lamb at Mercer. Now, obviously, he was the linebacker, while Lamb was more on the offense side of the ball, coaching quarterbacks for Mercer. But again, there's that connection and continuity there. And then, in the secondary, you're going to have the cornerbacks coach. It's going to be Dominique Franks. He's a hometown kid. He was from Tulsa, Oklahoma, which is awesome. He played at Oklahoma late 2000s, on that national championship, runner-up team, second team all Big 12. He was in the NFL as a fifth-round pick. And he's been at Tulsa, similar to Ryan Switzer, since 2023. And he coached the cornerbacks last season. So that's that stayover. So you've got Switzer as a stayover on the offense side of the ball. And here is Dominique Franks as a stayover on the defensive side of the ball from this past staff. Special teams coordinator will be Carter Barfield. He spent 7 seasons at Mercer and worked with Lamb at Mercer, and obviously Coach Mike Gray. He coached him as well. Before that, he was at UT Martin. Most recently, he was at Florida State as an assistant special teams coach, and I don't think we're too excited to see him leave the building as he helped coach a couple of All-American specialists there at punter and kicker. So, obviously, we go through this coaching staff here. You mentioned it. Obviously, a lot of names, a lot of new faces to FBS, but there's that chemistry and continuity where, like, in my opinion, right, there are certain ways to build staffs. Obviously, there are a lot of different ways that work, but to me, this is a formula and a plan that is built for success. Now, will it happen? Obviously, remains to be seen, but all in all, I don't think it's a terribly negative coaching staff at all. Like you said, it's not going to influence the grade too much because it is a wait and see, but it's something that you can get optimistic about if you are a Tulsa fan.
Also, the environment that you're in, right? Like these Gardner Webb coaches that he's bringing in, like they didn't overly impress. All right, on the defensive side of the football, like when they were there. All right, let's just get that out of the way, okay? But we talked about it with Rice and Scott Abel. We talked about it with Temple and Casey Keeler. We talked about it with FAU, right? And our boy Zach Kelly. Like the American Conference is one of those conferences that you can actually probably get away, and this will change year to year, right? So we could totally be wrong about this for the upcoming 2025 season, but it's one of those conferences where you can generally get away with not having an elite defense, right? Army and Tulane generally have like this past season and a half, like they've had really good defenses, right? And that's kept them in a lot of ball games and let their offenses that are good, but they're able to take advantage of their offenses in short fields even more. So, but teams like Memphis have had a lot of success, just chucking and heaving the ball, running the ball, like playing really good offense, right? North Texas, like, has given teams trouble, because of that Eric Morris offense. Navy gave a lot of teams trouble, because of that really interesting Brian Newberry offense that they've added there. So you can get away and be successful in the American. I don't know that you can win a conference championship without playing defense, right? But I'm not sure. I don't think you can't, like, you can succeed with a really good offense and just a mediocre defense, right?
Without a doubt, too. And also, like, numbers also sometimes don't always tell the truth with. Now, it wasn't great. Like, I'm not going to just sugarcoat it, right? But the
Yeah.
reality is, like, styles and complementary football, that matters. If you're Army and Navy, your defense is playing much, much less than your Memphis's and your other, high tempo offenses in the American, which is what Tulsa will be. He talked about, being a high tempo guy. And if you're leading the conferences that you were in completions and completion percent, like you're throwing the football a ton and scoring the ball a lot, you are putting your defense in vulnerable positions. Obviously, it has to be better on the field, and it's only going to get harder, right? Where you're not going to be able to put up these 40-point games all the time, at Tulsa. But yeah, you said it. It's not the end all be all. And the reality too is we're getting expectations, but that conference championship, yes, it would be awesome for sure. But Tre Lamb can exceed his expectations and not win a conference championship, in my opinion. Lastly, on the staff here, so you got front office hires, which are so important in college football today, which was nice that Tulsa was able to accommodate that. And I recognize that, like, yeah, we need to spend and surround Tre Lamb, who, by the way, is a new football coach to FBS, but also general. Like, he doesn't have 30 plus years of experience like Bill Belichick coming along, that he could use the help around him for sure. So he's bringing in former Tulane head coach and NFL guy, Chris Cefello. You also have Mason Beal from Fresno State to be the GM, Ravi Savitala as chief of staff, Grant Claver from Arkansas State to be the director of football ops as well. So yes, it's not a bad. I mean, again, I'm not gonna sit here and tell you I know all about these guys and if they're skeet or not, but it's just I like the idea of Tulsa making it an interest and a top of their priorities to put people around Tre Lamb to give them success to succeed or spots to succeed at Tulsa.
I agree, right? So what's the expectation at Tulsa, right? Is it that stretch that you had there with Todd Graham, early Bill Blankenship, Steve Cragthorpe, like where you're winning 7, 8, 9 games, double digit games? Is that the expectation? Because I mean they haven't won double digit games since 2016. All right, they've had 2 winning seasons since then. So what's the current expectation? All right, with the new American format and the way that it is, where you don't have Cincinnati, right? You don't have Houston, you don't have SMU. Okay, I think Tulsa should be able to go 2 bowl games. I think they should be able to. You take out those teams and you add the service academies, I think you should be able to go bowling. If not every year, every other year. I think that that's a realistic expectation that you can have. Do I think that Tre Lamb is going to meet expectations? I think yes, right? So that's going to lead me to give him a B, right? But I can't justify giving him more than that because even with his, nuanced offenses, like he really hasn't built a complete defensive coaching staff that's performed at a high level. He really hasn't won a ton of games. He's, drastically changed, the program of Gardner Webb for sure, but I just think that this is a hard place to coach and win at. But I do think, in terms of you're, I guess, middle of the pack in terms of actual resources as an athletic department in the American. Like you can compete. You can compete. You should be able to beat the Charlottes, the Rices, the UABs, right? You should be able to beat those guys. You should be able to. Now, my expectations for Tulsa as a program, even though Temple has kind of had it worse off these last couple years, uh, I think Temple, has a higher floor than Tulsa does as a program, you know. So that's kind of where I'm at with this program, this expectations. So I'm going to give it a B, kind of reluctantly though. I'm not crazy about him. There's other coaches that I've given B minuses that I would also have to give him B minus. If I didn't think he was going to meet expectations, but I have to give him a B minus at the same level that I'm giving some of these other coaching hires, and I'm like, I don't know. I don't know that I can do that. So
It's tough because we've done a bunch of these American hires, right? We did FAU, we did Temple, we did Rice, we did Charlotte, East Carolina. I remember that with Mike Houston going and getting out of there. So it's interesting because I'm gonna give it a B as well. But again, I gave B's to some other programs, in the American, or I gave higher grades to some other programs in the American that I just feel better about. So unfortunately, I think Tulsa got better from this. I do believe that. Right? Will it lead to wins? And that's sometimes where you have scheduling and different year to year context just matters. So I think the program is going to be better and be playing more competitive football in the American at Tulsa. Yes, without a doubt. Can I sit here and guarantee you that he's going to make a bowl game in most of his years? No, but I just think more times than not, I just like the hire, and I'm just going to give it a B here. But it's one of those things where I like a lot of the hires American, and the reality says not all of them are going to hit. So it's gonna be, you just gotta hope. If you're a Tulsa fan, if you're FAU, if you're Charlotte, if you're whoever, right? You just want to be your team to be the one that hits, obviously. And if you're Tre Lamb and you're hitting it big at Tulsa, that's awesome. And also too, I hate to say this, but if he's gone in a couple years, and it's not because he was fired, it's because he was promoted or someone else plucked him because he's done such a good job there, that's a great thing. And it sucks, obviously, but it's leaving the program in a better spot than you found it. And we talk about where you stack hires in the G5, and that's where you put yourself in spots like Boise State, like UCF had for a little bit. Cincinnati did that a very good job, and programs like that, you put yourself in a spot to succeed year over year in all these conferences.